and I spent a couple of years running business development for an ASP back at the turn of the century when, we invented the cloud back then, or did we invent the cloud with the mainframes? I forget. I know we invented the cloud one of those times. But it was a room filled with monitors, and there was each one of them was running a different application to monitor a different function. How much of this can we get rid of when we move to something like the SRM solution we're talking about in Viper? Can we get rid of a whole lot? I imagine we should be able to get rid of a whole lot of that.
I mean, remember the way we had it just before SRM 3.0, there were literally 3 products.
Yeah, you had 3 products.
I had 3 products.
Yeah.
And actually, they were not really 3 products. They were actually more, right? And so are you going to install each one of them? And then if this problem happens, you're looking at this one, you're looking at that one. I mean, it's just crazy, right? I mean, and you're really trying to manage a very complicated infrastructure. It doesn't work. So you've got to simplify that.
And the knock-on effect behind that, of course, is you've got resource pools and service pools that are associated with a particular hardware type, a particular customer, a particular solution type, and that sort of proliferates out. And to treat all of those in a mission-critical sort of state takes a lot of doing and a lot of architecting to get done. So the sort of next evolution in trying to get this into one, as you would call it, single pane of glass, but to get this into one ops center, to get this into everything's mission-critical, because people's businesses are completely dependent on that virtualized instance up and running and being monitored. Is the next exciting point from my perspective. This is where it gets sexy again, because we really do get the opportunity to use big data internally to predict states that traditionally have waited for a phone call or have waited for somebody to be watching the right screen at the right time when the wrong thing happens.
So I think the real advantage to a single pane of glass is prior to this, DevOps, at least in our scenario, they would mash up different tools, right? And it was kind of an undocumented dark art, right? So good luck getting one DevOps person to explain it to another or getting them to agree. But the data would be stored in different formats, often thrown away, right? So I see DevOps as one of these organizations that has learned to retain that data and try to mine it to figure out what's going on. But the single pane of glass concept to me is you get all of that data together in one spot to where your people and your tools don't disagree. And by doing that, you can accelerate, right? And that's a common theme. We need to accelerate delivery to keep up with the expectations of our users who are finding they could just go subscribe services elsewhere to achieve their speed.
I think it's kind of interesting that we're talking a lot about redundancy and failover and all these things, and then we finish off by talking about a single pane of glass, or I just hear point of failure, to be totally honest. I mean, I remember when AWS went down maybe a year and a half ago, and we had some stuff running in Virginia, and we had some automatic failure stuff that would put it in US West and would spin up some new instances, and load balancers would move around. And it turned out that everyone else running AWS also had the same failover script. And so their control plane crashed, and they were down for 7 hours, and no one could do anything. No one could move DNS, no one could move load balancers, no one could move IP addresses. And so I think it's great, but you do introduce unexpected dependencies, which can be extraordinarily hard to debug and can be exceptionally hard to recover from, because they're really at the kind of infrastructure level. And so I love the idea of centralized monitoring. I love the idea of centralized reporting. I love the idea of centralized management. But God, it's a bugger when the centralized management thing crashes. So I'm not saying that's not a specific product for us.
I was not proposing centralized management.
Yeah.
The reason is it's a highly. I completely agree with you. It's a highly distributed environment, and you can't have a single point of failure into the stuff there. The way Viper works is, it just pumps the data out. It's just like a pipe. It just blow, whatever data is coming out, it just lets anybody consume it. So you can connect the pipe to anything you want. You can connect the pipe to 100 monitors that you want. You can connect to VC Ops. It's there. It's just like blindly pumping the data out. All SRM does is, it's in his opinion, is that for a storage admin which wants the visibility there, it can consolidate the data for you. And so it's a combination of the two things. Sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I think my point is more just that, in search of perfection, we sometimes leave ourselves open to.
I completely agree. Completely agree.
We also sometimes, I think, use interfaces with insights.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this single pane of glass is something that you just turn on when the CIO walks in. So it looks like you're doing monitoring, whereas the rest of the time you're in the command line. So yeah.